Hi there, welcome to the Idaho 4 Brian Koberger case, Moscow, Idaho. What I want to do today is look at an interesting article which is taking in mind the presence of the true crime community, the TikTok true crime community, and the supposed impact it's had on the case as an article tells the story. I'm going to read it out today, analyse if necessary. For those that are currently here in this live premiere, welcome. Be sure to share your thoughts, opinions, reactions in the live chat box, right-hand side of the screen. As for everybody else and those on catch-up, be sure to leave your comments down below. Now, we've briefly touched upon this case community as being supposedly problematic. It's been more so people telling me than me myself experiencing it because I've not been around long enough, though I can quite possibly understand the extent it can go to considering where I've been and the people I've been around in other cases, communities, true crime related, such as the Dylan Rounds case. Maybe in one way or another, true crime as a whole is a bit of a shark-infested waters where you will get people that will snap and bite at you for maybe the simplest of mistakes, for the simplest of mispronunciations, for having a different viewpoint, a different opinion. You come out with an unpopular truth. I don't know, people may get easily triggered in the true crime community. Of course, those that have been around long enough, you can share, with me, you can share your thoughts down below in the comment section. Apologies about the cough, it's back again, terrible. But we just continue on with this video. I did do an earlier video today. If you want to catch up on that, if you're interested, top right corner of the screen, I symbol, just be redirected and you'll find some other videos to catch up on. But, today I can share with you briefly my experience, my encounters with the Idaho 4 case community, true crime as a whole. Has it been positive? Has it been negative? I can share that with you. And we can also look at this article, which was posted about 3 weeks ago. So it's kind of old, but not much else has come out since. There seems to be a lot of people in this case that know a lot, or supposedly do, and have come across all kinds of evidence, footage, material, audio, CCTV, whatever it may be. In terms of obtaining all that material, how easy was it to get a hold of, first of all? I mean, you've seen my coverage, could be considered a bit sparse, a bit weak, but that's only because I've not spent the same amount of time as I have with other cases, right? So with Kenny Veach, with Dylan Rounds, with Christine Passe-Parker, been able to adapt, learn as one goes along and keep people coming on in. Whereas with the Idaho 4 case, I've just not been around as long. But when it comes to things that I can do and that I am good at, comparisons, like with the Google Earth Street View imagery, I'd say that was somewhat successful in recent time. It was also good to see a range of new people coming on in. But obviously, what comes with high volume traffic can also lead to a bit more resistance than usual, and that's what did happen. And I'll go in a bit more depth later. What I'll do right now is get straight into the articles. As I said, leave your comments, questions down below, your experiences. Pinned comment, there will be one by me with some additional links if you wish to check them out. Without further ado, let's begin reading the article. The title of this article reads, Idaho Murders docuseries reveals how dangerous internet sleuths can be. They are not qualified, by Adi Morfoot. Okay, so some docuseries has come out in recent time. Has anyone else heard about it? I haven't personally, but for those that have, let me know your thoughts, if you agree or not. Yeah, internet sleuths. I've heard the word sleuth. I've never really knew what it meant, right? I didn't think it was really relevant to me. I mean, when it comes to my coverage on a case or coverage on a mystery, whatever it may be, I'm basically looking at it, I'm pointing out things, I'm comparing, I'm contrasting, coming up with ideas and theories, but making it very clear as to them being ideas only, and using specific wording and even common sense. Maybe people in the true crime community lack common sense, and that's what gets in the way of the truth and the mismanagement of it and information. Does it vary between platform to platform, TikTok, YouTube? Well, I think YouTube is more focused on true crime than TikTok. TikTok is short videos. so not enough explanation, not enough time to explain or cover it in depth. TikTok has a lower attention span due to degenerates on the platform and the way the platform's built anyway, and restricted in only 10 minutes or less videos. So YouTube is the main place to go for true crime, right? Videos. So, popular on Variety. Hashtag Cyber Sleuths, the Idaho murders, begins streaming on February 6th. Right, so it's already been on. What's that do now? Right. It's been over a year since 4 students at the University of Idaho were violently killed in their home, but the passing of time has not fatigued the public's interest in the case. Quite the opposite. In the last 12 months, there have been several television documentaries, Dateline's killings in a college town, and 48 Hours, the Idaho college murders, devoted to the case dubbed the Moscow murders. In May, James Patterson and investigative journalist Vicky Ward announced that they were working on a non-fiction book about the tragic deaths of the students Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, Zana Knodel, and Kaylee Goncalves, which will eventually become docuseries. Now, in my opinion, is it a bit too soon to be doing all this and publicising it when the trial hasn't even gone underway and Kohberger hasn't been, sent down or been released as a free person? Because it's still all ongoing, isn't it a bit too soon? Considering like how it was with the Dylan Rounds case, how they created a documentary early on, and it's, is it rushing things? Don't we need to focus more on the important part of trying to solve the case in the first place, right? As for the awareness part about the tragedy and what to expect next or what to avoid in the future so it doesn't happen again, can't that happen in the future? More focus on that. Anyway, it says, February 6th, Paramount Plus is releasing Cyber Sleuths, the Idaho Murders, a 3-part docuseries about internet sleuths on TikTok who try and find the Idaho college killer. The absence of any solid leads in the case created an information vacuum that the TikTokers were eager to fill. The docuseries follows several so-called sleuths who attempt to separate rumour from fact, whilst examining police statements and hunting for digital clues. The amateur detectives, who are not members of the media, visit the crime scene, speak to victim families, dig up potential theories, and name potential suspects, which ensues in witch hunts and cyberbullying. I mean, it seems like they're taking matters into their own hands there. I guess with that concept, maybe that's one of the reasons as to why they wanted to demolish the murder house, although it's probably not the best option or the most popular choice. Maybe it would have prevented it, but, it wasn't done immediately, so these TikTokers went anyway and caused some trouble. And I think, when you're on boots on ground and you're actually out there in public within the area and even talking to maybe key witnesses or key people and family members, could that be seen as possibly harming the case? Could it have some kind of legal implication, possibly? Taking matters into your own hands, almost acting as the police yourself, even though you're not really in that position to do so. That could be considered taking steps too far there. I guess it's interesting there how they're only talking about TikTokers only and not YouTube, because there are people on YouTube that cover the case and some may talk BS and others may be fixated on a point which isn't exactly true. Just a suggestion there. It's not just TikTok, but I guess the whole in real life aspect, TikTokers may be worse, different generation, different type of people and mindset, possibly. You see TikTok videos and people just randomly walking into people's houses in the UK and, going behind fast food places in the kitchen part when they're not allowed to, but they just walk on through like they're invincible. So new wave of people thinking they're untouchable and they can do whatever they want, go wherever they want and ask whatever they want, even if they're not in that position to do so. Can it harm cases like this? Possibly. I do remember though, and I'm not sure if it's on TikTok, a user, or YouTube, one or the other platforms, there was one female, I think it was a female, that was it something to do with the university, a person that worked there, and putting the blame on them, some kind of slander, defamation. It caused all kinds of legal issues and problems with that creator online. Don't know if anyone remembers that. Right, it goes on to say, the docuseries comes weeks after Brian Kohberger, who has been charged with 4 counts of murder in connection to the case, appeared in Idaho courtroom, where his lawyers attempt to toss out the charges against him were denied. Right? Idaho Murders director Lucy Jordan about online sleuths and whether they do more harm than good. What's this? Don't F with cats. What? They called him mostly harmless. Internet sleuths are the heroes. The Idaho murders, their role is murky. Was it always your intent to expose potential ramifications of internet sleuthing? I don't know what that is. From what this series was from concept to what it ended up being was a little bit different. At surface level, there were a lot of interesting things with this case that made you think that there should be questions and that there should be these people on the internet who could find the answers. A lot of these smaller police departments that are not tech savvy like the kids on TikTok are. So I went in thinking one thing and it became something else. It became a bit of a warning initially. It was a little bit more pro until we dove in. Wait, so is this producer, who was it now? Lucy Jordan, the director, having an optimistic insight at first, believing that these new wave of generations and people on TikTok and the internet would be able to find truth and make sense of stuff, but it turned out that wasn't quite the case and got a sharp reality check, possibly. What's this? Did you have any desire to wait for the Koberger trial to start before releasing this series? That way you could have determined if the sleuths in your series had gotten anything right. Fair question. Response-wise, saying, I feel like this case was the entry point to a story about the TikTok true crime generation. So when we're pitching the series, the outcome of the case was always irrelevant. It wasn't about that. It was about this social media phenomenon around the murders that had taken things by storm. I thought the story warranted a documentary because it's a very specific time in our culture that has allowed for this. You got a blatant distrust of the media, so people are looking for new voices. You've got a world that is essentially an ADD society who needs snackable content and can't sit down and digest things, so you turn to these sleuths. I wanted to show that these sleuths are people. They are entertainers. They are not qualified. They have opinions and they talk, and that's entertaining. We're in a strange place where especially the younger generation can't tell the difference between what's real and what's entertaining. So I thought it was really important to shine a light on this topic. I mean, when they say younger generation, younger people, what age range are they talking about? 13, 14, 15 years old or more? And to what point? 40, 30, 50 years old, right? Because when I look at it, when it comes to true crime, it seems to be more dominated by females than males. Even in the past, when I, in college took up psychology, I was outmatched. There was more females to males as the ratio in the classroom. Maybe that's just down to interest. Okay, it is what it is. But the specific part about age, it varies, right? And most people that I've seen in true crime have been, let's say, 24, 25 onwards up to about 64 years of age. In terms of my channel statistics, it's mainly 25, 26 years of age and older who watch my videos, right? It shows that the people that actually have a higher retention span are females on my channel, which I appreciate that. Now that's just based on only my experience, but at least from what I've seen, and I'm sure what other people have seen, when you get all the channels out there, the true crime ones, and I'm specifically speaking more of YouTube, but it can apply to TikTok as well. They're not like really young people covering the case. Like I said, 25 or older, 30, 40 years of age. And those people that cover the cases can still mess up or still make mistakes, just like how younger people would. So is it directly an age factor? Not quite. You can say a new wave of technology, a new wave of platforms out there, but both the young and older generations interact with. There's some people of the older generations that don't want to, do anything with that. That's fine. There'll be some people younger that are the same way, don't want anything to do with that. So I think it is mixed. It is varied, right? As for the entertainment part, we'll get into that later and I'll show you my thoughts. Next question. Do you think open cases like the Idaho case are harder for internet sleuths to solve than closed cases? Cold cases are where internet sleuths should exist. People need those cold cases solved. The problems come when sleuths are involved in an active investigation. Never before has a police department had to spend over $1 million on a rumour mill website to combat the rumours and the false tips that were coming in because of online sleuths. Which website was that then? Question. Not one of the sleuths featured in the series had any inkling about Brian Koberger's alleged involvement in the crime. Do you film them in real time when they found out about his arrest? Response, no. We got involved a bit later. We used a lot of videos that they'd created before his arrest to help tell the story. When we got involved last year, Brian had already been caught, but a lot of the sleuths don't believe Brian's guilty. Seems to be the case, I guess. Docu-series shows how close Kaylee Goncalves' father, Steve, is to one of the Idaho murder sleuths, Olivia, Chronicles of Olivia, who is trying to solve the case without any real leads. Did that surprise you? Yes, I was surprised, but I also thought that he is a grieving dad. He's looking for any connection to his daughter who is now gone. And Kaylee shared Olivia's TikTok videos with her dad because she allowed Olivia. But yeah, we would stop filming and Steve would be talking to Olivia in the other room and thought that was just wild. There were points where I overheard him asking her advice and I was like, man, she's in her mid-20s. It was shocking to me, but he's just so desperate for answers and this has taken so long. So what the shock factor that you've got grieving families, people in vulnerable situations and seeking help from a much younger, more inexperienced individual, and it's shocking how much truth or how much trust a person like that would place into a sleuth like that. But then again, there is forms of desperation, desperate actions, desperate measures, trying to find any answers from anywhere. It's understandable, but I guess it's also understandable how certain sleuths out there could take advantage of it. Next question. Steve does not appear in your series. Was that intentional, or did they decline your request to appear on camera? We reached out. Steve had agreed to be in, per Olivia. He was very positive about Olivia, but when we went to actually go film, his lawyer shut that down pretty quickly. With this docu-series, you are giving the sleuths who you followed that much more exposure. Does that concern you? People need to see this because they need to know what's out there. We can't just close our eyes and pretend it doesn't exist. Yes, of course, this might grow platforms for some people who are a little unscrupulous and might not need the attention, but I think the greater good is to showcase what's going on to a larger audience so that they can take part in understanding what's happening. Right, so that's it. Cyber sleuths, hashtag. I might even use that in my video so people can relate to it and find it more easier. So kind of linking on to the title of this video, the overall question could be, due to the state of the case and how it is right now and everything that's happened in the past, due to the presence of just people online in general from any platform regardless, right, when it comes to true crime and covering it on their channels and making videos about it, how much damage has been caused by these internet sleuths? Well, first of all, I don't like the word sleuth. It sounds a bit cringy, just like the term YouTube streets. But if you have to use it so more people can, I don't know, hear about the video or hear about the discussions, then maybe it's needed at times, right? And only for those points. But what I want to do first of all, before I answer that question, is throw in my experience. Although limited, I've had a few little encounters already when it comes to the Idaho 4 community, okay? There's been a small little rise in new people coming to the channel. I don't know how many remain or stick by, unless you're only here for the Idaho 4 coverage, but whatever, it is what it is. In recent time, yes, I've covered Idaho 4, but many months ago, I did some on and off videos. Not too deep, just looking at some articles, trying to learn on the spot. May have not been that successful, but, you know, hands tied to other cases, which are just as important. And I can only juggle so much at once. So like on the sideline, I did that coverage on Idaho 4 and some people joined along and watched, regulars, which was good to see. It wasn't that popular, at least from my experience, okay? Not many people cared about it the same way as they did about Kenny Veach or Dylan Rounds at times, right? And I didn't see any, or really see any new people coming on in either. So either my coverage was terrible, my videos were very boring or something, or the topics weren't that exciting at the time, maybe. Or it could be YouTube wasn't recommended my videos to people out there, new people, because I don't know, because I was changing the topic. Maybe it ruined the momentum, the flow of things. Who knows? But back then, it was just seen as like a side thing, just to cover here and there if there was nothing else to cover, right? That's just being realistic and honest, right? In more recent time, I guess, had that idea to do the map analysis because I was able to, and I knew what I was doing, and I've seen the area a few times now, and just pointing out what was clearly visible, blurred images, censored things. What does this mean? And, you know, you don't have to be a complete expert to know everything, right? Just simply creating a video saying, look what I found, can be important enough, right? You can have a very inexperienced person that finds something and has no knowledge about it, but they're the first ones to come across it or create the discussion, which then sparks attention from many other people around the world or in different states who then focus in on it, and then it just blows up like that. So it can have its positives, right? No matter what level or stage you're at. I think what people need to understand when it comes to the true crime community, more so for the outsiders out there that have a form of entitlement. Some have the idea, mentality of gatekeeping information, and others have the attitude and high expectations that everybody that comes into a case should be up to date on everything and in line with everything. And if you're not, survival of the fittest. I mean, people need to calm down a bit, because at the end of the day, whilst you might know a lot about a case, there'll be another one out there you have no clue about, a complete amateur, but somebody else knows all the answers, knows all the information, right? So I come into the Idaho 4 case not knowing really that much, but I know a lot more about Kenny Veach case or Dylan Rounds case, right? Which people from the Idaho 4 case may not know much about. So vice versa, you understand how things go. In terms of regular viewers on my channel who have participated in that case previously, they've been very patient, right? If I've been confused or, you know, didn't quite know, they've just cleared it up and there's not been any problem. But outsiders, some within the Idaho 4 community, you get told off like a naughty little boy, and it's like, God, how pathetic is this? You know, if there's no pushy negative agenda in the first place, it shouldn't be met with a negative response. Just talk normal. Just respond normal. It's as simple as that. But I guess with true crime, the toxic competitiveness, trying to outdo one another, maybe. I said you can share your thoughts and experiences down below. But yeah, there is some people on and off on my channel recently who haven't seen or heard me before, but they know about the case and they may have not approved of my coverage on the case or how I interpreted certain things or how I worded things. And that is probably just down to a language barrier. There was a range of different impetuous people over the period of time or so from the Idaho 4 case where people just didn't understand what I was getting at or what I was saying. But one, I was using a form of common sense, and two, I was using specific wording. And maybe because I'm that specific, people don't understand me at times. But then the masses out there that aren't specific and just cause a lot of confusion and mess, maybe they are the problem, the problematic ones. But I haven't been exposed enough to the Idaho 4 case community to come to a true definitive conclusion of whether it's caused damage or not. I could say it wouldn't surprise me, considering what I've seen in the Dylan Rounds case and what was said there. I mean, one example being on the Shack Ladies live stream back in 2022 with Bob Farrell, Shack Lady and Bob Farrell talking about how Dylan supposedly got kidnapped by Chase Venstra, Robert Aviles, put into a horse box, tied up, and then accidentally Dylan Rounds ended up hanging himself around the neck and dying. Such sheer stupidity and just randomness going on with really no substance or evidence to back it up. Such silly claims like that, which can cause damage and confusion. And because there are vulnerable people around, right? Yes, you can get internet sleuths. You can get people that investigate the case online. You can get the armchair detectives. If anyone said that to me, well, that's incorrect, because for most part of it, I've been a bed boy detective because I've sat on a bed, or I've upgraded to a chair now, but I'm in a bedroom. I'm not in an armchair, so that term doesn't even apply to me. But aside from that, realistically speaking, you've always got an audience with these creators and these investigators online. And sometimes the audience members, some can be a bit vulnerable and prone to being deceived by, what the real truth is. So when you got vulnerable people at play, these creators can take advantage of that to bend or twist the narrative so it suits them. And because they know they've got an audience who will listen and nod their head, yes men, yes women, well then they've got a backing then. Now, what I would say is, there seems to be a range of people that know a lot of ins and outs about the case and the different names, individuals and characters, people that live nearby, people that are related or friends of the victims, etc. Other people that supposedly need investigating or looking into, neighbours nearby, or doorbell cameras that need to be looked into, and the original footage that has kind of been neglected since. Range of different discussions here and there. My question would be, where would you start to begin with in terms of a clear-cut, definitive bullet point presentation? Where would you go first? Because when you get involved in a case, right, and it's already been ongoing for quite some time, to catch up with everything, it's difficult. Now, I can't relate to other people, like with the Kenny Veach case, right? I heard about it in 2015, but it really started being covered to that intensity of when I got involved 2020. The hike stuff footage already conducted by key people like Jeff Clark, Sean Horlacher, etc. Right? But in terms of online coverage on a regular basis, that was me, and that's where it all started off. Now, if I was a viewer that came in 2-3 years later, I can't imagine how confusing or hard it would be to learn about everything. It just isn't possible. It's not always possible. So what I would ever suggest is try and look at the latest information as to what's currently happened. Sometimes when you look at the latest information and news coverage, it also provides a recap of everything that's previously happened, just very summarized. So, the start, the midpoint, the ending, and then how things were conducted afterwards, post-crime, the crime scene itself, okay? Yes, I've seen the odd photo where you saw that blood leaking out at the side of the building. That's quite shocking and maybe arguably disturbing. But, I could be considered out of my depth on this case, but things that I can do and know I can do, I will, right? Even if it's just pointing out a weird finding or pointing out a suggestion or a question. Most people, regulars, seem to respond back and acknowledge in a positive fashion. Outsiders to my channel involved in this case community don't always understand me, right? Here's what it is. I guess if with time I stuck around long enough covering it, then it could be worthwhile. I mean, as to anyone out there, right? Do I visualize myself as being a key individual that could help shed light on the Idaho 4 case? Or is that too far to say? I don't know. I think due to the performance of my recent videos on the case, you could say, well, it looks like it's a sign to start covering it. And we can kind of tie this in now with how they were saying entertainers when it comes to the online sleuths, these wannabe detectives and stuff. That, if you twist or bend a story or narrative, whether you know it's right or wrong, and you're still doing it, it can benefit you, right? It can extend the case, it can extend the mystery. That's why when it comes to some mysteries out there, not quite related to true crime, they'll add more mystery than it really is. And it's done in a manipulative way because they want the mystery to continue on for as long as possible, because if it ends, maybe their channel does as well, right? I mean, when it comes to the Kenny Veach case, if I found a mystery or pointed something out, if in the future it's debunked, I'm going to make sure and try my best to debunk it and not just leave it open-ended, because that wouldn't be fair, right? Maybe in the true crime community, people will go down a certain rabbit hole or create one to benefit them, their growth, or it's an unpopular opinion or a popular one, and then they can gain in the process. The whole idea of it being entertaining even though it's a serious situation, you know, people can take advantage of it. I mean, in a way, if you are doing that sort of stuff or covering it for many different reasons, first of all, you've got to be somewhat interested in the case, whether you find it fun, exciting, or creepy, or just interesting or educational. You got to have a want in the first place to do it. And with that want can come better performance. If you're forced to cover it or forced to read it like a prisoner, you're probably not going to put much effort in. You're probably going to stumble. You're probably going to make more mistakes, and it's going to tell in the video quality, right? I mean, on the odd occasion in the past when I might have not been in a good mood, but I've decided to do a video. What? Just for the sake of it? No, to do a video because of that, you know, consistent, whether you call it schedule, or there's something important to cover, but you might not be in quite the right frame of mind to do it, and you kind of like forcing yourself to do it, which then isn't as natural, and maybe the output and quality, the delivery of whatever you're trying to get across isn't done as well, and that can have a negative impact. And what I do nowadays is, if I'm not in the mood, I just don't make a video. There's no point forcing something out, right? Maybe the odd exception if there was breaking news, but if you know that you're not going to give it your best, it's not worth doing it, because then it doesn't seem as genuine and it can harm a case, right? I think a range of these people in the true crime community aren't forcing themselves to do this coverage or getting involved in Idaho 4. They're doing it because they are actually interested, and maybe they're very passionate about Kohberger, innocent or guilty. And it does seem like majority of those online truly believe he's innocent or have the idea that he could be, okay? Is that because of the way the case has gone, how it's been handled, how it's been dragged out? Whether it be lack of evidence or the fact that there is evidence which points in a different direction, like the DNA of 3 unknown males, and that's not been followed up or successful since. That's still a mystery. And I think that's a very critical, important part. What I would suggest is, can we go any further? I mean, yes, you've got to get on with stuff eventually with the court proceedings, but I would say, is there any way possible, whilst yes, Brian Kohberger can be examined, questioned and whatnot with evidence and witness reports, testimonies in defence, for and against, doesn't the focus need to be on the 3 unknown males and the DNA? Because are they people involved in the case or not? Were they witnesses or the ones responsible? Were they working alongside Kohberger or not? Now, I don't know personally, but has Kohberger ever commented on the 3 males unknown DNA found inside of the building? Has that ever been mentioned, like a response or reaction? Because I think those unknown males need to be investigated or followed up on. Maybe it can't because they've got no more leads. That would be very unfortunate, because for as long as they're out there unknown of, unheard of, and they don't call out or, you know, reach out, they're seen as guilty, responsible. So if people were thinking that way too, I would understand as to why they, online, would think that Kohberger could be innocent, that Kohberger is a fall guy for others out there that have been responsible and have disappeared since. I'd understand that. Now, when it comes to the Dylan Rounds case, people were thinking Brenner was innocent. Not as many though. More people were thinking Brenner was guilty. Is that because of the way the story narrative has gone? Kind of, but it's also because of the evidence found along the way. There's an overwhelming sense of evidence which points more in the direction of Brenner than anybody else. Now, in defense, some people could say, well, it's just because Brenner was a fall guy and that the people responsible ensured that there was enough evidence to point in Brenner's direction as incriminating evidence to suggest he's the one responsible. So the puppeteer masters did a great job in setting Brenner up, supposedly. You could look at it that way as a counterpoint, but at the end of the day, when it comes to Brenner, the timestamps, phone ping, the time-lapse footage, what was on him, what he was doing, it did seem to correlate with being responsible for killing Dylan Rounds for sure, right? with time, things can come out, be reinforced, or there could be more shocking twists and turns. But it seems like there's more of a direction there. Yes, it's been dragged out, it's been delayed, and the main goal of finding Dylan has been unsuccessful at this moment. But as for getting a hold of the right person who's been responsible, it was somewhat successful in the end. It just took longer, right? With the Brian Koberger case, maybe that didn't take as long, but as it stands right now, it is dragging out. The difference is with the Brian Koberger Idaho 4 cases, you could say that there isn't as much strong evidence to say Koberger is 100% responsible in comparison to how it is with the Dylan Rounds case with Brenner. So I'd understand that. Besides evidence that might have been contaminated by police or poorly handled, to anyone's knowledge, is there any possible evidence out there which has not been retrieved yet but could be for the future? Is that a possibility? And the next question would be, is there any physical evidence which has been moved away from the area and disposed of elsewhere? Right? Now, am I correct in saying that the murder weapon has not been found, but the sheath was, which had DNA which belonged to Koberger? So, is that enough evidence? Well, you could argue and say, well, there's evidence to suggest that there's been his presence in the area at that time. But you've always got a counterpoint to say, well, someone could have got that sheath and rubbed it on Koberger, or somehow got DNA from Koberger, put it onto the sheath whilst wearing gloves, and then did what they did, but then planted it, left behind. So then when police do come across that sheath and identify it, they'll say, well, there's no DNA of anybody else, because anybody else could have been wearing gloves at the time when handling it. But the last thing that was on it was Koberger, unknown to him. And if that truly was the case, then you can say Koberger was set up, that he could be innocent. What you would also have to reinforce is whoever that is truly guilty and responsible of an act like that and planting possible, kind of like false evidence in a different direction to cause misdirection, there must be some kind of agenda and grudge that person or people have against Koberger, which would have made me think, is it people of the same age or just slightly older that may have been mistreated, maybe not mistreated, misunderstood, or felt that they weren't treated with respect if Koberger was teaching them, or in the presence of some former students. I don't know. It's small scale, but, well, no, it's not really small scale. Another example, a bit unrelated, could be a person or people at high school, they get bullied, they get treated like shit, treated like an animal, finally snap, break, reach that breaking point, and then do a school shooting in revenge. Yes, there's some collateral damage, but sometimes that collateral damage, they're not always innocent. It could be bystanders, people that watched the bullying take place in the past and found it okay and maybe recorded it, uploaded it online. They're not exactly innocent, are they? Right? But at the end of the day, school shootings taken place, people have responded back and retaliated. Is it possible that any former students that were at the university within Moscow, Idaho, were in the presence of Koberger at some point, and Koberger may have disrespected them, or at least the students felt that they were poorly treated by Koberger, so they wanted to get revenge in the future and teach Koberger a lesson? Is that even possible? What else would I throw in? Kind of unrelated to that discussion part, but ties into something else. Like in recent time, we're covering the Google Street View imagery of those shoes on the overhead lines to symbolise like a drug dealing spot or a house nearby which is in usage of drugs and substance abuse, right? Considering that Koberger in the past had issues with drug usage, but he eventually recovered and got better with time, is it any small possibility that Koberger was in that area and somehow had a relapse? I don't know what it would have led to from there on. Is it even possible that Koberger could have been under the influence of drugs? He had a weird side effect, bad reaction, because he's not used them for a while, and then took it out on the students in that house. Seems far-fetched, it's just an idea. I'm only tying it together, and people watching right now, maybe as to do it as a poll or not, Do you want me to do a standalone video trying to explain that a little bit more? Or should I just leave it as it is for now? I only tied it in together because of the findings on Google Street View where people were saying it was to do with drug dealing, and because Koberger, as we saw in that news article in the past, was using drugs. Could he have had a relapse? And if he's in that area at the time, at a certain point, as it was supposedly stated or suggested in his white Elantra, could he have somehow ended up coming across a drug deal? Could he have ended up finding drugs? I don't know. There's not enough evidence, maybe. It's just an idea, but I want to know your thoughts on that. Linking back though to the people within the Idaho 4 case, right? I think there was references made to 4chan, completely different website, like an image board, thread, discussion, forum page. Was it where conspiracies are coming from or ideas? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, you could say that a motivating factor as to why some people kind of get passionate or involved in the Idaho 4 case and believe that they can make sense of it or come out with new ideas and push it a bit further, whether it be to an extreme or not, because they feel that the police haven't done a good enough job. You know, what's been going around has said that police have mismanaged the case poorly or with certain evidence. Is that 100% true? Well, at least from the articles that I read, that's not been mentioned, but maybe the articles are biased, right, when it comes to police. I'm just trying to think, when it came to the Dylan Rounds case, was it mentioned about the police there, negatives? A little bit, maybe not as much, but it was at least mentioned there, but that's probably because it was Candice Cooley that was being interviewed by these news outlets, so there was going to quote her and mention what the LE supposedly did, mismanaging evidence and delaying things, which led to certain evidence going to waste and not being recovered, and never being recovered. With the Idaho 4 case, I've not seen any articles talking about police treating the case poorly. Maybe the only criticism, questioning was that genealogy thing and tracing it back to Koberger and the methods done there, not done before, not a normal thing, supposedly. But besides that, in terms of the crime scene and the evidence there, not much critique, but there has been online by the presence of people on YouTube, more so. You know, one thing that needs to be acknowledged, and I said tying back in line with my recent video, if something online is successful and popular, people will gravitate towards that, right? Audience members, the latest trending thing. But the creators are the ones that are going to be really enticed in going in that direction, because they have a channel, they want to grow, they want to gain whatever. So they will go wherever that, you know, of their choice. I know people say online, do trends and cover the latest stuff, but if it's not of your interest, then you're probably not going to participate the same way. But if you're interested in true crime as a whole, maybe any case could be of your interest. And even if it's a bit new to you, you're probably more likely to get involved in that than if you was to suddenly do a trend on bakery cooking, because you're not interested in that the same way as you are with true crime. True crime can be like an overall vague like community, right? True crime, this and that. True crime can be like an umbrella term for many, many different cases out there, right? A true crime missing person case, a true crime murder case, a true crime mystery missing person case, etc., etc. So a lot of people can get involved, and with being like an overall community, there'll be a lot more people present. And same with creators. Now, do creators get on well with one another? I don't know. The way the articles and the way police have been highlighting that the people online have been causing trouble, disruption to the case, it's not been of any use or positivity behind it, okay. But the people online think that they're doing a good job, that they're making sense of stuff and they are helping. Right, well, there seems to be a bit of a divide there, just like how there's a bit of a divide between people that think Koberger is guilty and those that think he's innocent. But my question would be to people is, if you know, feel free to answer down below, what's the relationship like between creators and audience members and creators with other creators? Are they all in line with one another online, on YouTube, TikTok, or are people attacking one another for different opinions? Are creators and channels going at war with one another? Are audience members getting attacked? Is nasty things going on or not? I want to know your thoughts. With the Dylan Rounds case, that's exactly what happened, right? You got the case, you got the supposed story, but what was motivated by going off the original narrative was the original story was switching and changing, so there was a lack of confidence. Lack of confidence, you go elsewhere or you think outside of the box to make more sense of a situation. And if you truly believe in your ability, then maybe that's what you will do, right? From the moment I got involved, I was thinking outside of the box because I had a certain way of learning and understanding, right? I tried that with the Idaho 4 case, like with the maps, right? Or looking at a brief summary. Might not sit well with people who aren't familiar with the channel, but it is what it is. Is there a lack of confidence within the Idaho 4 case? And that's what's driven people to creating stuff online and trying to analyze things. This is the thing. You'll have different true crime creators. Whilst you can have a true crime case, a cold case, and an active case, one's more suited than the other for creators and people covering it, sleuths, investigators online. Actually, to be honest, let's look at the response to that article, what we looked at first, about the active cases and the cold cases, right? The Kenny Veach, it's not true crime, it's a mystery missing person case, but it's kind of a cold case. So you kind of working with what you have, working with what was originally there in place, and then adding on from that. Your own building blocks, right? Are you making it up as you go along? Well, no. You're making sense of what's already happened and then what could have happened, right? It might seem like you're making it up or just creating a false story, but with time, hopefully, there is evidence and new material to reinforce it as a fact. With the Idaho 4 case, different ideas, theories, and concepts, is there evidence there to back and support it up? I wonder. Like, my idea of covering Idaho 4, why would I do it in the first place? Well, I would have to be interested in it. Do I have that hunger? Probably not. I wasn't there since day one, so I've missed out on quite a bit. Catching up on it can be considered arguably overwhelming, and by the time you've catched up with it, what new stuff is there to talk about? Now, might be different for me. I'm trying to understand it on the spot. With the Dylan Rounds case early on, people were saying, well, what else is there to talk about? And one of the reasons why people moved on, bigger channels, other channels going on to the Idaho 4 case, Tyler Feller, maybe No Thanks possibly. Who's the other one? Oh, I forgot the Zav Girl, right? Etc. People like that, established channels going wherever the next popular case is. I stuck around on Dylan Rounds and created another 300 plus videos of different ideas and perspectives. If I was able to do that in the Dylan Rounds case, just imagine what I could do in the Idaho 4 case. That's the uncertain question, right? Maybe if I was early on in the Idaho 4 case, there would have been more videos covered by now because there would have been a greater understanding. Who knows how the community would have gone or reacted there, right? Do I think that such as the Idaho 4 case is like done for entertainment, entertainers? I think most people will respond to that and say, no, we're covering the case because of interest, because of educational reasons, and I'm sure audience members would agree too. I think every now and then, here and there might be some subconscious thoughts going on within these people in the communities where they're thinking, you know what, right, how can we slightly twist it? What else can we look at in between to fill the void, right? Sometimes desperation can show within people if they don't cover any other cases. If they rely on just on one case, they obviously want it to stay alive for as long as possible, and they might even create new controversy or talking points, even if it isn't entirely true. Now, with me in the Kenny Veach case, my channel became popular and known because of the Kenny Veach case. But luckily, ever since, I've been able to cover other stuff, which has been kind of equally as successful, right? So I don't have to rely just on one case. I don't have to rely and have my fingers crossed that one case remains unsolved for as long as possible. So if it's a cold case, it means more coverage and more time and more growth. And I don't quite see it like that, but I understand audience members out there. Some have said, oh, We don't want the case solved just yet because we're interested in the mystery. It's very understandable. It's understandable both ways. You want something solved because that's like a normal thing, but also you don't want things to come to an end because you might actually be enjoying it or finding it interesting. And yes, whilst you do get all these tragedies and bad stuff going on, it's bad for the people involved and impacted, but naturally, once again, it is a normal thing that those on the outside that aren't impacted by it can be bystanders, watch along and see it as a form of entertainment, just like the equivalent of the Colosseum in Rome back in the past, the gladiatorial arena. You got the people that are caught up in the fights and fighting for their life and suffering at the same time and feeling all kinds of negative emotions and maybe fear too. But the people in the audience, the crowd, the audience, they can just sit back, watch, relax, enjoy, if that's what they do for entertainment or other interest, because they know they aren't impacted by it. But of course, in the future, if they get caught up in something similar, well, then they're going to be in the alternative role of suffering. Just how it goes. It's kind of like a natural thing in life there. And it doesn't just apply to true crime. It can apply to many real life situations and in real life itself too, right? As said, what would you call it? Whilst they're saying entertainment as like it's a negative thing in the Idaho 4 case, there is a thing called edutainment, and it's been mentioned and noted by YouTube itself under a certain category. Edutainment is a combination between educational entertainment material. So something can be educational, which means it could be interesting, which means it could be fun to learn about, right? Like different types of positive feelings and emotions which drive you in a direction and keep you going and keep you learning about something, right? You're more likely to learn more and know more if you find it interesting and have fun in the process of learning. Learning can be fun. Education can be fun. Now, do I think like that? Well, like with school, no. But depends what role you're in, right? If you're the creator, you've got a different role, taking it more serious because you're the one creating the stuff, right? The pressure is on you. You don't want to mess up. You don't want to fake it. You want it to be real and add on from that, hopefully. If you're a viewer, there's not much responsibility. You just have to watch and listen if you want to and if you find it fun or interesting. So it's a bit more relaxed there. So maybe as the creator, more of a serious approach. Was it less playing, more working in a sense, right? When it comes to the true crimers on the Idaho 4 case, maybe a certain portion do the live streams and panels, not panels, just live streams and interacting with their audience, so that they've always got like a feedback and overlay of stuff to talk about or refer to. There's constantly in the loop on the spot. But if you're one of those creators that makes handcrafted videos, records, edits, piece together, there's a lot more going on there, and you need to be working with the material you've got in front of you. Is that always possible? I don't know. Is there a key place though in the Idaho 4 case with all the material all in one place? But then again, you probably get bombarded and spammed with 400 emails of go here, go there, look at this, and that'd be too much. It'd be a bit crazy. What do I think about a cold case and an active case? I understand that an active case, if people are engaging online, the internet sleuths, if they do stray from the narrative, it can be problematic, it can be damaging. I understand that. And with the Idaho 4 case, it could apply in some way or another. With a cold case, no one's on it, are they? So it's like a sandbox, open for interpretation. Everyone else has given up on it, so, you're welcome to solve it yourself. That's kind of like how it is. With the active cases, the Dylan Rounds one was an active case, and the family said online coverage of people caused harm, caused disruption, caused confusion within the case. The family of Dylan Rounds, it wasn't good. So that's not good, is it? Now, just as a heads up, when it came to my coverage on the Dylan Rounds case, through third-party sources and on a consistent basis in terms of what stood up as for the story, basically the mother of Dylan Rounds, Candice Cooley, did acknowledge and approve of my coverage on the case, which is obviously a positive and appreciated. That's good to see. If you're in a situation where you can cover a case online and it just so happens to be an active one, and the family or the friends of the victims, etc., approve of what you do, that's a positive start, right? You're on the right track. If you're able to think outside of the box on top of that, even better. Because normally 9 times out of 10, if you're going to cover an active case like the Idaho 4 one, you have to stick to the story, you have to stick to the news, you got to be formal, you got to put your shirt and tie on and be a goody-goody person, right? Because you start straying away, which maybe a fair few have in the case, then it leads to a supposed wave of disruption, which the police supposedly aren't too pleased about, right? But at least when I've done my coverage on stuff, I've been able to stick with the story immediately or later and been able to branch away with my own thoughts and ideas, but using specific wording to make sure that it's just a theory or an idea at a certain point. If in time you can reinforce it, then that's good, right? So there's certain foundations and building blocks. Is the style different though between a cold case and an active case? Yeah. A cold case you can pick up from where you left off or where whoever last covered it and go from there. You can also look back and work back. There's no deadline. There's no rush. It's a cold case. It's not going anywhere. An active case, it's ongoing. It's live. So if your coverage needs, or if you want it to be relevant, you want to be listened to, you want people to come along, where you got to cover the latest news, and if not that, you got to cover shocking news which has never been covered before, whether it's right or wrong, true or false. But I've covered active cases, but I wasn't late with the Dylan Rounds one to the same extent as I am with Idaho 4, so it's a bit different there. But how would I do things though? How would I really do things if I did come along late? Well, I'd probably just briefly look at the latest news and then try and look back at some recaps if possible, and then in between see if I can pick up on any inaccuracies or any contradictions and stuff like that, or any odd findings. But to do that in the Idaho 4 case, considering the amount of discussions that have taken place, it would probably follow along the lines of I say something and then people say, yep, we've already been there, we've done that. What about this question? Oh, it's already been answered. What about that finding? Oh, it's already been debunked. What about this? Oh, it's already been talked about. That's all that will happen. Now, if you've got your own community, it shouldn't matter what outsiders think. If people watch, that's good. And if people regularly follow your channel but haven't followed the case, well, it's new to them just like how it's new to you, so it shouldn't really bother. It shouldn't really matter, right? But it depends how deep you are into a case and how far or how long it's been ongoing. If the Idaho 4 case turned into a cold case, I would say that's probably when it would get worse, right? Because in the meantime, whilst you got a bit of structure in real life, and there's some people in real life working on it, and then the rest online are just keeping the case alive. Is that the motive people have? No, I think the motive people have is they talk about the case because it works, it's successful, it's popular. I even saw one channel saying, well, it's a popular case, so that's why we're covering it, and that's the interest of the viewers. So it's kind of like the customer is always right. If the customer wants it, then they'll get it. Sometimes you might not actually have an audience at first, but you see that a video pops, does well, so you think, well, I'll just keep up with that, right? Is that what I did with Kenny Veach? Well, initially I thought, well, it's working, so I guess that's the right thing, so I'll do that, and I'll do my best to cover it, and that's what I did. With the Idaho 4 one, it's a bit mixed, because I said when I covered it in the past, roughly, didn't do that well. But I covered it just recently, still considered an amateur to the case, and it did well. It was like a sign. But where to go next, what to cover next, what to talk about next, which hasn't already been talked about. It's like, yes, maybe I can provide insight into stuff which has never been mentioned before, but is it like finding a needle in a haystack because of all the discussions that have happened already in the case? Like with With the Dylan Rounds situation, if I came in much later, all that I talked about may have already been talked about by somebody else if I didn't get in first, right? So what do they call it? Beating a dead horse or something? Not in relation to Brenner, there's no pun intended there, but this video is kind of like understanding the concept of the community, the pros and cons, and the state of things. Because, like some viewers have said, the way this case gone, Idaho 4, it's kind of reached a standstill, right? So you could say it's kind of like a semi-cold case, not literally, but in terms of movement, kind of reached a bit of a dead end until whatever else happens next, which is, I guess, awaiting the whole trial of Koberger to begin. So I'd understand that during periods and times, moments of almost like silence, and there's not much going on, that can be the times where it might drive sleuths online harder to go at things and push more false narratives or new ideas along for the right or wrong reasons, right? The Dylan Rounds case, though, that actually put people off. People actually ended up walking away because it wasn't getting any. It wasn't getting anywhere, so people just walked away. As for me, though, I thought, well, it's reached a dead end, so you can slow down, you can take it in, you can look back now without having to rush. Active case, but it's reached a bit of a dead end point, which isn't a bad thing. It means you can reflect back and learn new things without having to rush. I said, an active, ongoing case, trying to stick with the story, the latest news, falling in line with it so you don't appear as a bad person or appearing as a troublemaker, maybe feeling restricted as well, and not having the time to reflect back, because if you do, you fall behind. It's like a rat race. And when it comes to a rat race situation of competitiveness, maybe a toxic trait within the true crime community overall, right? Dylan Rounds situation, people walked away, people got bored, people thought it wasn't going anywhere. For me, I thought, well, I'll just tick things off the list and keep on doing stuff, because in the process of doing it, even if it doesn't entirely solve the case, it at least keeps the case alive. That can be a separate positive factor with anything, true crime related or not. Do people cover the Idaho 4 case to keep it alive? I'd say no, because the case is popular anyway. It already receives enough coverage online and in news articles and interviews or news programs, shows like that. And I think, didn't people do like some little analysis of the courtroom appearings of Koberger or something in the past? Not the trial, but the things before that. So there's already stuff to work with and material there. If a case isn't as popular, then it might fall more onto the creator, a person online, to talk about the case, to reignite the interest and the discussions there. So maybe a cold case is where it falls under for a sleuth online. A sleuth, an internet sleuth, can still participate in an active case, but there might be some rules and regulations or things the authorities would want you to be able to do if you're going to cover it, not to interfere or get involved directly with the case, because they're already working on it themselves. So by you doing their job, it's not actually helping the situation. It might be causing more damage than it's worth. If you start causing distractions or causing trouble, bringing attention to yourself, and the police get involved, then they're actually diverting their attention away from the case itself, which means the case itself is slowing down. So it's not exactly a positive thing there. What is worse though? TikTok or YouTube with the influencers or the sleuths online? Which platform is worse? I've not really seen it from TikTok, because I've not participated on there with that case. On YouTube, I've been told that it's toxic. I've come across some impetuous humans that don't understand me, and some other whingers and whiners, which maybe if I stuck around long enough, I'd probably see to the full extent. maybe with time. But, the case is still ongoing. Even if people online have caused trouble or harmed the case, if the police themselves have messed up with evidence, that's still more damaging than the people online, I would say. But that's just my opinion. I said there's not too much I can talk about because I've not had enough to experience to know, but for anyone that has been around long enough on the case, you can leave your comments and thoughts down below. As for the article that we read, I don't think it went into too much depth. It was actually more about advertising their docu-series rather than the true extent of everything. It seems like that the initial person involved in the docu-series and creating it had an optimistic approach on the online people, and then came to that realization that it's not all that positive, to be precise. But yeah. And the other thing to acknowledge, you will get true crimers on YouTube where they'll only show up every now and then, may even do a one-off video talking about a particular case. Those type of people tend not to spread a false narrative the same way as a person that might regularly cover it on a regular basis, which I get. These part-timers on cases, they can be a full-on creator, yes, but they only cover the case here and there once or twice when there's something new, and when it's the true news itself and the normal narrative and story, right? They stick with that. They don't think outside the box. They do it in a formal way. And because it's done in a formal way, it means there's less room and less ideas, less videos about other areas and topics, which the other sleuths, the live streamers, the ones that stick with the case, will make up for the right or wrong reasons, right? So there's different types of true crimers out there. People that stick with a case and those that just cover it to tell the original story, right? The ones that tell the original story and the odd update will lack the depth, but they stick with the story, which could be considered good. But the ones that stick around on a case, yes, there's higher chances of things going wrong there and maybe them twisting and turning the case in a bad way and causing harm there. But there's also more chances of new discussions and maybe new interesting ideas coming about because they're actually putting more time and effort into looking into those areas, right? So I think at the end of the day, if you handle yourself appropriately, creators, sleuths, whatever you want to call it, can operate somewhat successfully in both cold cases and active cases. But you can't act the same exact way in between both entirely. There might be some crossovers, but there's some give and take, right? And it might also depend on what case it is and the police force and the police department at hand. If it's reputable or if it's in stronger numbers force, they're not weak, they're not short in numbers out there, it might not be as lenient. If you're covering a case which is in the middle of nowhere, there's a smaller population, the police themselves, the resources are stretched, they're not as developed as others. In other states or countries, the laws may not be as strict, or then maybe the punishment won't be as intense either for those online that may create a false narrative or cause disruption in a case. Different lenience levels. Is the Idaho 4 one lenient or not? Well, didn't it say something about the police struggling or something, or a smallish community to take in mind? If it was in a populated, well-known place, then there could be stronger, stricter laws and action taken against those online that may have spread false stories and caused distraction in the case, maybe. So there's all these little factors you got to take in mind. I think we'll leave it there for now, though. Hopefully you found the video somewhat interesting, hopefully. And we'll see what happens next. Thanks for watching, goodbye, and good night.